Subterranean Cities. Painting with the broadest of brushstrokes, biologist Julian Huxley informs us that the tempo of human evolution during recorded history is at least 100,000 times as rapid as that of pre-human evolution. Inventions or improvements of a magnitude that took perhaps 50,000 years to accomplish during the early Paleolithic era were, he says, run through in a mere millennium towards its close. And with the advent of settled civilization, the unit of change soon became reduced to the century. The rate of change, accelerating throughout the past 5,000 years, has become, in his words, particularly noticeable during the last 300 years. C.P. Snow, the novelist and scientist, also comments on the new visibility of change. Until this century, he writes, social change was so slow that it would pass unnoticed in one person's lifetime. That is no longer so. The rate of change has increased so much that our imagination can't keep up. Indeed, says social psychologist Warren Bennis, the throttle has been pushed so far forward in recent years that no exaggeration, no hyperbole, no outrage can realistically describe the extent and pace of change. In fact, only the exaggerations appear to be true. What changes justify such supercharged language? Let us look at a few. Change in the process by which man forms cities, for example. We are now undergoing the most extensive and rapid urbanisation the world has ever seen. In 1850, only 4 cities on the face of the earth had a population of 1 million or more. By 1900, the number had increased to 19, but by 1960 there were 141, and today world urban population is rocketing upwards at a rate of 6.5% per year, according to Edgar de Vries and J.P. Thiss of the Institute of Social Science in The Hague. This single stark statistic means a doubling of the Earth's urban population within 11 years. One way to grasp the meaning of change on so phenomenal a scale is to imagine what would happen if all existing cities, instead of expanding, retained their present size. If this were so, in order to accommodate the new urban millions, we would have to build a duplicate city for each of the hundreds that already dot the globe. A new Tokyo, a new Hamburg, a new Rome and Rangoon, and all within 11 years. This explains why French urban planners are sketching subterranean cities, stores, museums, warehouses and factories to be built under the earth, and why a Japanese architect has blueprinted a city to be built on stilts out over the ocean. The same accelerative tendency is instantly apparent in man's consumption of energy. Dr. Homi Bhabha, the late Indian atomic scientist, who chaired the first international conference on the peaceful uses of atomic energy, once analysed this trend. To illustrate, he said, let us use the letter Q to stand for the energy derived from burning some 33 million tonnes of coal. In the 18½ centuries after Christ, the total energy consumed averaged less than 1/2 Q per century, but by 1850 the rate had risen to 1 Q per century. Today the rate is about 10 Q per century. This means, roughly speaking, that half of all the energy consumed by man in the past 2,000 years has been consumed in the last 100. Also, dramatically evident is the acceleration of economic growth in the nations now racing towards super-industrialism. Despite the fact that they start from a large industrial base, the annual percentage increases in production in these countries are formidable, and the rate of increase is itself increasing. In France, for example, in the 29 years between 1910 and the outbreak of the Second World War, Industrial production rose only 5%, yet between 1948 and 1965, in only 17 years, it increased by roughly 220%. Today, growth rates from 5 to 10% per year are not uncommon among the most industrialised nations. There are ups and downs, of course, but the direction of change has been unmistakable. Thus, for the 21 countries belonging to the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, by and large the have nations, the average annual rate of increase in gross national product in the years 1960 to 68 range between 4.5% and 5%. The United States grew at a rate of 4.5%, and Japan led the rest with annual increases averaging 9.8%. What such numbers imply is nothing less revolutionary than a doubling of the total output of goods and services in the advanced societies about every 15 years, and the doubling times are shrinking. This means, generally speaking, that the child reaching teen age in any of these societies is literally surrounded by twice as much of everything newly man-made as his parents were at the time he was an infant. It means that by the time today's teenager reaches age 30, perhaps earlier, a second doubling will have occurred. Within a 70-year lifetime, perhaps 5 such doublings will take place, meaning, since the increases are compounded, that by the time the individual reaches old age, the society around him will be producing 32 times as much as when he was born. Such changes in the ratio between old and new have, as we shall show, an electric impact on the habits, beliefs and self-image of millions. Never in previous history has this ratio been transformed so radically in so brief a flick of time.